Will the committee supply please come to order? This section of the committee supply will now resume consideration of the estimates for the Department of Municipal Relations. Questioning for this department will proceed in a global manner. The floor is now open for questions. The honourable member for Wolseley.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to ask the minister if he can share how many employees the department has that are responsible for reviewing subdivision applications, and are there any vacancies in that department?
The Honourable Minister of Municipal Relations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just before I do answer the question that was asked by a member opposite, I'd like to provide the member with some information that was asked of yesterday. So the application portal for agencies, boards, and commissions, I have a copy of that. And I also have a copy, or a link rather, to the Canadian Home Builders Association benchmark study, which I referenced yesterday in one of my answers. So I can provide that for the member opposite. I'll table it for the member opposite and go.
The honourable member for Wolseley.
Thank you very much for that. But I thought the minister was going to answer the question I already asked. So that's fine. I wasn't expecting to ask it again, but I can. Okay.
The Honourable Minister of Municipal Relations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The most recent numbers that I have is a total number of 54 employees with a net vacancy of 9.
The Honourable Member for Wolseley.
On page 21 of the estimates book, it states that the department has a target to communicate 75% of subdivision application decisions to applicants in under 16 days. Does the minister have any concerns that a target of less than 16 days may rush thorough examinations of subdivision proposals?
The Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to clarify that 16-day process is really the front end of the entire process with respect to this particular issue. If somebody who is applying would come forward to us, that 16-day would allow for all the due diligence to be done, make sure that the application is complete. That does not necessarily mean that decision is made by then. It's a 16 days that they will receive a letter saying that yes, indeed, that this has been received and that all the correct procedures have been followed. A lot of that does include coordination with other departments in government. So agriculture would be one, as you can imagine, in rural settings. And of course, MTI, again, rural settings would be another example where that might be the case. We always encourage applicants to come ahead of time to discuss with staff here, and we have staff that are very willing to do that and have those discussions ahead of time to make sure that everyone understands what the process is. And of course, there'll be some flexibility built into that process as well, knowing full well that some cases are more complex than others.
The Honorable Member for Wolseley.
Okay, thanks. So just to clarify then, so the minister doesn't have any concerns like that target of 16 days or less, it feels like the right amount of time. It hasn't been a concern.
The Honorable Minister.
Well, like I said, it is a process that's trying to get a good turnaround time for those who are applying, ensuring that, again, it's not necessarily a decision being made. It is certainly, though, giving the time to, or an expedient turnaround time for the applicant to make sure that they know that the application's been received and that the process is now in place.
The Honorable Member for Wolseley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to ask the minister, how many subdivision applications did the department receive last year, and how many of those were approved?
The Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So for the subdivision applications, on average, about 800 subdivision applications in a year, and a little less than a dozen are often denied. Sometimes their denials aren't necessarily a denial. It could just be that there were some other considerations that haven't been thought of when the application was made. So we would then go back and make some recommendations and ask them to come back and reapply. Subdivisions, of course, subdivisions occur outside the city of Winnipeg. Winnipeg takes care of its own, but these would be outside of the largest metropolitan region or largest metropolitan city in the province.
The honourable member for Wolseley.
Thank you for that answer, Minister. And can the Minister also share how many assessment inspections were completed on time in 2022-23?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The most recent numbers we have would be 98,675 property reviews, and that's assessed of a total of 442,000 properties.
The Honourable Member for Wolseley.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. In my opening statement yesterday, I made a reference to the Winnipeg Police Headquarters, and I know I was advised that I couldn't ask about things that weren't in the budget book. So I just want to be clear, though, the budget book states that the minister is responsible for policy that supports autonomy and accountability of local government. And knowing that the city of Winnipeg is an important and trusted partner of the province, would the minister, will the minister listen to Winnipeg City Council or support Winnipeg City Council and ask his government to call a public inquiry into the Winnipeg Police Headquarters as they have asked?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And given the nature of this issue, I think it's best that would be dealt with through the courts and let the courts decide on how best to proceed. It is a City of Winnipeg matter as well, and I know the City of Winnipeg will be certainly appreciate any lessons learned that City of Winnipeg has learned throughout that entire process.
The Honourable Member for Wolseley.
I just will ask one more question on this. The city of Winnipeg has been asking the government to call a public inquiry into the Winnipeg Police Headquarters. The project went nearly $100 million over budget, and the courts found that a city official accepted a bribe worth hundreds of thousands. Yet the PC government refused to call a public inquiry despite the city's request. So can the minister explain, does he think that this is, and I'm quoting from the book, can he explain how this is supporting autonomy, accountability, safe and financial efficiency of local government?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, I say that this is an issue that's best dealt with through the courts. And I know it's a matter that is before the courts, and I know that we trust the legal system and the court system to deal with this issue as it sees fit.
The Honourable Member for Wolseley.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm sure our partners at the City of Winnipeg would hope for more from our government, but I will move on to talk about roads because they're in rough shape. We all know that, and that this government has repeatedly underspent on infrastructure spending. So my question from the minister is why is his government failing to support municipalities and their much needed road repairs?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, Mr. Chair, I mean, I know that with discussing infrastructure would really fall under the infrastructure department. However, this department, I can say, and I know our government in a whole, has been very supportive of municipalities. Municipalities have received a $47 million increase in operating funding this year, and that's going to be a permanent increase to their operating budgets. In addition, a $23.5 million increase in capital spending, in capital funding, again, a permanent increase to their budget. I think that speaks to how much this government is invested in growing and working with our municipal partners. I know that municipalities were very important to the NDP caucus. I just question why today they voted to defund the police. I mean, let's be honest, we as a government have called on the federal government to cover the back pay for RCMP pay to the municipalities. Federal government hasn't come to the plate, and we've asked them to. We had a resolution before the House this morning to do just that, and the NDP voted against it.
The honourable member for Wolseley.
Well, the minister is raising something that's not actually in his department book, so I'll just respond to it, that we also have called on the federal government to do same, and I think the minister is well aware that, and as I said to the leadership at AMM, clearly his government was playing a game with something way too serious to play a game with, because you don't write a resolution that is full of negative comments on the other side of the House and then expect them to vote for it. So if they seriously wanted to help folks in municipalities, they would have approached it differently and not made just a political game out of it, unfortunately. In November 2020, the provincial government announced that construction was to begin on the new Daly Overpass in Brandon and would be completed by October 2023. But it took the government until February 2022 to hire a construction company to start work on it, pushing the timeline of completion to the summer of 2024. Can the minister explain why it took them over a year to hire a construction company and what the timeline for completion currently is for this bridge?
The honourable minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I know the member opposite knows that that would fall under Manitoba Transportation and Infrastructure, so it does not fall under the auspices of this Department of Municipal Relations. However, it's I will go back to discussing what happened this morning in the House, and unfortunately the NDP decided, instead of defending the police, to vote in favor of defunding the police. It's something that is on record for forever, and I know that the members opposite I don't know if they want to tell their constituents that's how they voted, but certainly I think every constituent and every person in Manitoba should be aware of the NDP stand on defunding the police. Just because there's certain words in a resolution they didn't like, that means they would rather stand against police and in favor of their own political ambitions. I think that's been made very clear.
Order. I would just like to remind Minister and the members that are asking questions that we are try to keep the question matter relevant to the estimates book. Just recently that's kind of wandered away from that. I just want to remind everybody to loop it back more specifically to the estimates book. The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and appreciate your sage advice on that. Again, I would suggest to the member, and I suggest that the member is aware that the overpass she's referencing falls under the Department of Infrastructure, not the Department of Municipal Relations.
The Honourable Member for Wolseley.
I expect I'm going to get the same answer here. It's unfortunate that the Minister for Municipalities can't provide more information on municipal issues, but the Arlington Street Bridge in Winnipeg was supposed to be decommissioned in 2020, but as of this year, the city has said they do not have the funds for this project. Could the minister explain if his government is planning to fund construction of a new Arlington Bridge?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and as the member is aware, the City of Winnipeg sets their own infrastructure priorities within their own basket funding. And we know that it was our government who created this basket funding model, and we know we've further simplified it and have increased the amount of money that municipalities receive for this type of basket funding. I know that last year we provided all municipalities with $15 million for road repair. This year we gave $7.5 million to the city of Winnipeg for road repair, and we know that potholes are certainly an issue in the city of Winnipeg, and of course all municipalities right across the province this time of year. And the city of Winnipeg was very, very happy to receive this money. I know I attended the announcement with some colleagues of my own here, but also with Councillor and Deputy Mayor Janice Lukes, who was delighted to have that money come into the city budget, and very delighted to see that the province is taking such action to repair roads here in the city of Winnipeg. And of course, as in the past, we've done it across the entire province. We've actually had $100 million with accelerated street renewal in Winnipeg over 5 years. That's another initiative our government has undertaken. So to suggest that municipalities are not receiving funding would be ill-founded. I believe that municipalities are giving a very fair share. And of course, we know that there's always work to be done, and there's always more work to be done as always. And of course, there's always evolving issues and challenges that arise. And as those arise, we will continue to work with our municipalities and be good partners, not only with the Association of Manitoba Municipalities, but also municipalities directly. And we understand the importance that they serve. When they serve their constituents, they serve the residents of their communities. They are often on the front lines and on the ground level, making sure that the province that we live in and enjoy stays prosperous, healthy, and beautiful.
The honourable member for Wolseley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, we all know that municipalities had their funding frozen for a long time, for 6 years. So it's not a surprise that certain projects that were planned couldn't be completed. I don't know if the minister's ever driven over the Arlington Street Bridge, if he's familiar with that part of the city. But I think this is a very important issue for not just Winnipeggers, but for lots of Manitobans who travel through the city. And it's unfortunate that there's really no accountability for the fact that municipalities haven't been able to do many of the projects they committed to because of the lack of funding from this department, from this government. But I will ask a little bit about water infrastructure, and I'm sure I'm going to hear more of the same. It's not my responsibility, it's not my department, but we'll try. Water infrastructure includes critical projects such as water treatment facilities, lagoons, and sewers. The infrastructure needed to transport clean water. These are often funded with the Investing in Canada program, a joint federal provincial municipal funding program, which the provincial government has failed to properly subscribe to for many years. Can the minister explain why his government is failing to properly invest in a program that provides funding for water infrastructure projects?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I just think I want to correct the record here. I'm not sure that the member is terribly accurate in her assessment of our government's investment in wastewater. Let's just talk about some of the things that our government has done. In 2020, previous minister in this government committed to $137 million per year in total capital expenditures. That 137 in 2020, 137 in 2021, 137 in 2022, and 160.5 million in 2023. So we're estimating around 525 million total. That does not include our one-time supports throughout COVID. So Manitoba Restart at 272.5 million. Road repair grants, 22.5 million. Disaster prevention and climate resilience, 32.1 million. Centerport water and sewer, 40 million. Special warrant, so water and wastewater, 100.1 million. A special warrant for the Manitoba Water Services Board, 4 million. One-time provincial transit support, 13.4 million. We've had COVID supports, one-time census top-up, 0.84, so $840,000 to a full total of $486 million. Mr. Chair, I think that speaks to how much our government has actually invested in wastewater, and I know that it certainly doesn't necessarily make for a terribly appealing political campaign, so that's probably why the NDP did not invest in those types of critical infrastructures, and rather to focus their investments on things that they thought would make them more electable, rather than investing in things that need to be done. So where they didn't get it right, and they decided to take the low road and try and avoid the most important pressing issues at a time that would have alleviated a lot of the pressures, particularly during COVID, we did it right. So over $1 billion investment that I just talked about right here. That's a record of our government. Their government failed, ours succeeded.
The Honourable Member for Wolseley.
That was quite a campaign speech. But in the meantime, municipalities across the province are saying that they need investment in water infrastructure. So I don't know if the minister is listening or thinks they're lying. I don't know. But what I'm hearing is that municipalities are struggling on this issue, and that without provincial support, they're going to have to pick up this tab themselves. Can the minister explain what his government's future plans are for investment in water infrastructure?
Before we go on, I just want to remind members of this committee that you're not to imply or use language that would suggest people are lying. So just a reminder for committee members. The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been very clear that our government has invested a tremendous amount, over $1 billion in wastewater. If the NDP were so concerned about investment in this sector, in this space, they would have done that over 17 years. They didn't. Their priorities were political priorities. They did not give unconditional funding. Everything came with strings attached. And those strings attached were to make sure that the NDP government of the day got reelected. What we're doing is giving municipalities the autonomy and giving them money to invest in their local priorities, and we've helped them, and plus that, over $1 billion investments in wastewater. So I will take our record and put up against the NDP record any day of the week. I've talked to municipalities, I've talked to AMM, I know what the priorities are, and I know that there are concerns. But let's not forget that when you have 17 years of a government that does not invest in critical infrastructure, that creates problems for years to come. Those problems are still being dealt with. We're still making up for lost time under the NDP government. That's the record of that. After our government formed government, we had dealt with one of the most disruptive issues of the 21st century, which is COVID-19. Despite all that, We've managed to invest more in this critical infrastructure space than the NDP ever did. The NDP failed miserably at this, and that's why we're cleaning up their mess. We're making sure that this investment go into municipalities. They have the ability to invest in their own communities. They have the autonomy to do what they believe is best for their residents and their citizens. And we've helped them along the way with wastewater. We've helped them with infrastructure. We've helped them with operations. I just wish the NDP had thought of that 17 years. They had 17 years to get it right, and they didn't.
The honourable member for Wolseley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just repeat my last question. What are the minister's what are his government's plans for future investment in water infrastructure?
The honourable minister.
Well, it's quite simple. Not make the same mistakes the NDP did. Let's be honest. Our government has invested considerably in this space, and we're going to continue to do so. We've already made a commitment to municipalities that operations and capital will have permanent increases. We're given $1 billion to wastewater space here in the province of Manitoba. I wish that the NDP could have done the same over 17 years, because let's be honest, they failed to deliver on critical infrastructure. That's not only with wastewater, in all kinds of infrastructure projects, they failed at it. What we've done is made sure we cleaned up the mess of the NDP, all the while having to deal with a global pandemic that no one foresaw and was able to predict. If the NDP had to deal with that, who knows what kind of mess we've been right now. So that's why I'm so proud of what our government's record on infrastructure, on wastewater, and on how we dealt with municipalities. And again, if the municipalities were so important in the NDP, they would have voted in favor of a resolution that would have called on the federal government to make sure that they cover the back pay for RCMP and fund police in critical communities across this province at a critical time when crime is at a high.
The honourable member for Wolseley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know the minister is very new in this department and in this role, but I would hope that, with this budget and with some forward thinking, he would be able to share with me even one plan for future investment in water infrastructure. I'd like to hear all of the plans, but let's hear one.
The honourable minister.
Well, I appreciate the comments from member opposite. I know she's new to the role as well, and but she must understand and know full well that our government increased capital spending to municipalities in budget 2023 by 17%, a budget which her and her colleagues voted against, by the way. Her and her colleagues voted against asking and calling on the federal government to fill the back pay for RCMP this morning. During their 17 years of government, they failed to deliver on critical infrastructure projects. They failed to deliver on critical wastewater projects for municipalities across the province. Our government has come in and cleaned up their mess and dealt with that despite a COVID-19 pandemic. So, I mean, the members asked me before, and I'll say again, what is our plan? Not to make the same mistakes the NDP did. We won't do that. We're going to make sure that funding is done in a proper manner, in a manner that gives municipalities the autonomy they need and gives them the money they need to invest in the communities, to invest in their future, and invest in their economies. Because that's how we grow a province, and that is the goal of this government, to grow our province. And we know that municipalities are key to doing that. The NDP had no respect for municipalities. When they were in government, what did they do? They forced amalgamations. And at the slightest hint of any opposition to that, they called them howling coyotes. Well, that's not very respectful to municipalities. And I know that municipalities across this province are still frustrated with the NDP performance over the 17 years. And I know a lot of them are hoping that they don't repeat those 17 years again, even another 4 years of that. That's why I'm very proud of our government's record on investment in our communities, in infrastructure, in wastewater, things we got right that the NDP didn't.
The honourable member for Wolseley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The minister may recall that his government tried to download responsibility for snow clearing to municipalities a few years ago. Can the minister share the status of agreements with municipalities for snow clearing services?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's my understanding that the shared services that the member is referring to does go through MTI rather. Maybe just clarify what specifically she was referring to, because the cost sharing services does come through MTI, Manitoba Transportation Infrastructure. So maybe she could clarify what she's asking for my benefit.
The Honourable Member for Wolseley.
Well, is the minister able to tell us what the cost sharing formula is for snow clearing services?
The Honourable Minister of Municipal Relations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The cost-sharing formula that your member is referring to, it's actually MTI that, again, Manitoba Transportation and Infrastructure, that enters into those particular agreements. On this side, Municipal Relations, we're responsible for providing operating funding to municipalities, as the member is aware, of course. I've discussed a few times in this estimates process. But again, that agreements are entered into by MTI department.
The Honourable Member for Wolseley.
Perhaps the minister can just speak to whether or not, in his estimation, if municipalities are happy with snow clearing agreements and the cost sharing formula.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As the member knows, and I said, it does come through the MTI department. So municipalities do deal with MTI directly as well with respect to some of these service agreements. So that's where some of the any issues or any concerns or any contentment with that those agreements would be expressed at that table, not so much through municipal relations. I would defer to my colleague, the Minister of MTI.
The Honourable Member for Wolseley.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I would have thought that the minister would be having lots of conversations with municipal leaders about their contentment on a wide variety of issues and could have spoken to that. But luckily I've been able to have those conversations myself, so I can get a read on that. I would like to ask the minister if there if his government has any plans to bring back 50/50 transit funding.
The Honorable Minister of Municipal Relations.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and as the member is aware and knows full well that we as a government in 2016 went to this basket funding model, giving predictable funding allocations to each municipality. With respect to transit, of course, we know that unique challenges came up during COVID. And as a province, we provided $13.4 million to the transit meeting communities in, I believe there's 4 of them in the province of Manitoba. $13.4 million went to them, and that leveraged over $53 million in federal funding as well. That's just for our municipalities here in the province. Likewise, the Winnipeg Transit Plan, we've committed to it to almost $170 million. I'll read off some of the projects that we're committed to. The ISIP projects, Radio and Intelligent Transportation System Replacement, $4,500,000. The North Garage Replacement, we're looking at $60,800,000. Transition to zero emission buses, $92,200,000. Rapid Transit, the downtown corridors and preliminary design, $2,200,000. Primary Transit Network Infrastructure, $6,100,000. Wheelchair securements retrofit, $3,800,000. So I think it's very clear that our government is committed to investing in transit, not only in our largest city in the province, but of course any of the municipalities that use transit in their own communities. I know that these are very important initiatives that's been undertaken, and in our time in government, we've been very clear that we supported municipalities, and we've done so. We've put our money where our mouth is, and we've done it. Previous government did not do that. Previous government did not give unconditional funding to municipalities. They did not give unconditional operating or capital funding to municipalities. So I think that's a very stark difference. And to be clear to the member opposite, I mean, we've been in contact with municipalities right across this province, in very close contact with the Association of Manitoba Municipalities. And we're very aware of the concerns that they have as it relates to this department. And we know that they do deal with other departments, as they should, and that's a whole of government approach. That's what a team does. We as this side of the House and this government works as a team. We ensure that everybody has a role to play in making sure that anytime we have any impact on any particular community, that particular department is engaged with that community or a group that represents that community. So we're very aware of any issues that are going on in the department, at a department level, and that's why I have no issue with referencing colleagues of mine saying that they would be best to discuss certain issues with, because we know that we work as a team, and we saw under the previous NDP government in the dying days that was anything but a team. It was well, nothing short of chaos. And we on this side of the house and we this government don't subscribe to that kind of governance. We make sure that when you work as a team, you serve your constituents and residents and your communities best, and that's what we'll continue to do.
The honourable member for Wolseley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'm certainly getting a lesson in observing chaos in the dying days of a government, so thanks for bringing that up. Just to further ask about transportation funding, certainly some of the municipalities I've spoken with are concerned, do want to see a return of 50-50 funding. And I guess, I mean, that's not what this government's planning to do, so that's been established. But I'm sure the minister is aware of recent, there's certainly been a lot of recent news coverage around the city of Steinbach and concerns about transit there and the impact that's having on people in terms of work and the economy there. So are there any funds earmarked specifically to help the city of Steinbach with transportation, with transit funding?
The honourable minister.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I know that member opposite did ask about the transit plans for the city of Steinbach, and they did undergo a study. They underwent a study to determine whether or not they want to go down that route. And we trust and we have greatest confidence in the city of Steinbach and council to make their own decision as to whether or not they're going to go that way. We know that we on the side of the house believe that municipalities should have autonomy. So I've heard the member opposite ask about autonomy, and then at the same breath turn around and say, but the government of Manitoba should somehow intervene on the decisions at the local level with respect to transit in the city of Steinbach. So I'm not sure which one it should be, but as far as I'm concerned, at this side of the house in our government, we trust the municipalities to come back when they do plans like this, and there's more than just Steinbach that's done these plans. They come back with it as a council-approved plan saying this is what we want. We will look to work with those individual municipalities on a case-by-case basis to see where we can assist them in helping them grow their communities. I know that members opposite have asked in some capacity for us to intervene, and it seems politically convenient. They want us to intervene in some cases, but not in others. They want us to give autonomy in some cases, but not others. So I'm not too sure which direction the NDP have finally decided on, but on this side of the house in our government, we are going to make sure that municipalities have the ability to make these decisions and come back to us when they have these proposals and council approval.
The honourable member for Wolseley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, sorry, I'm not even going to comment on that. I'm going to ask some questions about the Office of the Fire Commissioner. How many comprehensive fire protection surveys and risk assessments were undertaken last year and over the past 5 years?
The Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There was a comprehensive assessment and risk assessment done over with the 237 fire services throughout the province. And that was done meeting with every single one of them to make sure that there was a snapshot of all the needs in each service and what they're able to provide. It's my understanding through GIS technology now they can also kind of map out the services that can be provided by each of the services. So it gives a snapshot of where we're at as a whole. I think that I want to again commend the Office of the Fire Commissioner and all the work that they do in the province of Manitoba, and of course work they continue to do to keep our communities safe and make sure that they provide the essential services of protecting life and homes.
The Honourable Member for Wolseley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can the minister tell us how many fires there were in municipalities last year and over the past 5 years? And if he could also elaborate on major causes.
The Honorable Minister.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll endeavor to get that information for the member opposite here. I know that the Office of Fire Commissioner has been working closely with Stats Canada to do a national fire incidents report. I believe that BC was a pilot project where they released that information. I understand this year other provinces will be released as well, so have a nationwide snapshot. However, we will endeavor to get that particular information to the member that she asked for.
The Honorable Member for Wolseley.
Okay, I'll ask my next question. I understand you may have to get that information as well, but if the minister knows how many fires were caused by arson, and what kinds of things his department is doing to mitigate fires across the province.
The Honorable Minister.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, as far as a number of fires due to arson, most of those would be under investigation, so I couldn't comment on the numbers of those due to the investigation nature of it. However, I know the Office of Fire Commissioner is very clear on a number of initiatives they want to undertake to make sure that fire safety in general is taken seriously. We know the 237 organizations or offices right across the province all have their outreach into the communities, and a number of initiatives like Fire Prevention Week, Burn Awareness Week, and other public messaging that goes out to make sure people, families, especially families with children, understand that small things they can do in the home to either prevent fires or at least mitigate the damage and potential loss to life that can be experienced through fires.
The Honorable Member for Wolseley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can the minister tell us how many investigations are currently underway?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And municipalities are actually responsible for determining the cause and origin of the fires. And the UFC is actually brought in specific circumstances to bring in certain expertise. So, but typically it's the municipalities that are responsible for determining the cause of fires.
The
Honourable Member for Wolseley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question was about investigations of fires. Does the fire, does the minister not have an overall understanding of, the total investigations that the fire commissioner would be responsible for right now?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the Office of the Fire Commissioner has 31 undergoing right now, keeping in mind, of course, that municipalities aren't required to report to the Office of the Fire Commissioner only when they're brought in for the specialty, but right now, 31 active cases.
The Honourable Member for Wolseley.
Thank you for that answer, Minister. Are there any funds available to help municipalities dispose of hazardous materials like asbestos? We know that there's I've certainly seen it in Winnipeg. I'm sure it happens in other places where there's piles of rubble after a fire that can't be cleaned quickly, and there's that potential of having asbestos in them or other hazardous materials. And is that something that the government, thinking about the fact that's an obstacle to economic development, but also community safety, have any funds been set aside to help municipalities with clearing those hazardous wastes?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And municipalities are able to compel the property owner to clean up the mess that is left after construction or some kind of demolition. Of course, we know that if the property owner does not comply, they can be fined and then charge the amount to enforce and certainly compel them to clean up. And of course, in terms of funding, as we know that there is that unconditional basket funding that goes to municipalities, that's through the province. But at the municipal level, they have the ability to play the enforcer on that through compelling residents and property owners through billing them for the cleanup.
The honourable member for Wolseley.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Minister. And I previously asked some questions on water infrastructure, but I have a few additional questions that I missed before. So, does the minister have any idea how many households in Manitoba don't have clean drinking water, and in which municipalities those are?
The honourable minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Municipalities are typically responsible for the delivering of drinking water to their residents. Of course, the standard that is set is through environment and climate. They set the standard, and certainly if there's any issues in the municipalities, they can come to the Water Services Board and request assistance at that time or through other means. But Water Services Board would be one avenue that they can get to address some of the issues with drinking water in their communities.
The honourable member for Wolseley.
So can the minister speak to, I mean, maybe not exactly how many households, but how many requests in the past year to the Water Services Board for concerns about clean drinking water in municipalities?
The Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Water Services Board this year, so it's at $24 million is their budget. With respect to the list that's been requested, we don't have that on us, but we'll endeavor to get that information. We'll make that request of the Water Services Board and see how many clean drinking water requests have come through that. But at this point, I can give the member opposite the budget amount, which is $24 million.
The Honorable Member for Wolseley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would appreciate getting that list. That would be helpful. And also wondering if the Water Services Board has any issues with the CO Silica project and the potential impact on clean drinking water from that community.
The Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, the Water Services Board is not a regulator, but the Clean Environment Commission is, and that's before the Clean Environment Commission right now, and we want that independent body to make that decision and certainly provide advice as to how to proceed with, to reference the CO Silicon Sands project that's the member opposite has referenced.
The Honorable Member for Wolseley.
So my understanding from the government website is that the Water Services Board conducts feasibility studies and environmental impact assessments for developing intermunicipal or regional infrastructure services. So would the minister not think that there might be a role for the Water Services Board in regardless of the fact that there is a Clean Environment Commission review happening?
The Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's my understanding that, of course, through the municipalities, if they're going to build a water infrastructure project, they go to the Water Services Board to get the environmental impact assessment done. So that would be the onus on the municipality to do that, to come to the WSB, the Water Services Board. In the case that we're referring to CO Silica Sands, that is, like I said, with the Clean Environment Commission, which we're going to rely on their expert advice on that mine potential.
The Honorable Member for Wolseley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question. You'll have to rule if it's in order or not. I'm hoping the minister would want to reflect on this, but a lot of us, probably all the MLAs, have received a lot of emails from people, that sort of 15-minute city conspiracy theory. And I'm wondering if there's been backlash, with his department, from people subscribing to this conspiracy theory, and if the department has plans to try to educate Manitobans on this.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Certainly our department relies on the expertise of professional planners and don't live in the world of conspiracy theories. And we rely on our planners in our department and around the province in different communities who can make decisions what they believe is best for their individual communities.
The Honourable Member for Wolseley.
Well, that's good to hear that that's the intention. But does the department have any plans to try to, educate Manitobans? It seems to be a lot of people believing in this conspiracy theory that would get in the way of municipal relations, city planning. So there's an education opportunity here for the department. Has the minister considered using that opportunity?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, let's be clear. If our government had to respond to every conspiracy theory out there, we'd spend all the time chasing down rabbit holes and never get anything done. So, like I said, our goal as a government is to rely on the planners and professional planners to give us expert advice.
The Honourable Member for Wolseley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I noted in the budget notes that the department target and completion rate for respectful workplace training was 90%. So that has been met in the department. And so my question is if the minister has participated in respectful workplace and diversity training.
The Honourable Minister.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. And as an MLA, I've undergone respectful workplace training. I know a number of MLAs have done that throughout their career here over the past few years. And I know that, as times change and evolve, expectations in the workplace change and evolve. And I think it's important for not only elected officials, but folks right across the civil service to undertake these types of training to make sure that they're aware of current conditions and what's considered acceptable.
The Honourable Member for Wolseley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, for that answer. And also, as the Minister endeavored to undergo reconciliation, education, and training.
The Honourable Minister.
Oh, well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the question. Of course, I think everyone, every MLA in the Manitoba legislature has a responsibility to and a commitment to reconciliation. We know that that's certainly something that is talked about quite often, but I think should be backed up with actions and not just words. Of course, I'm always open to different types of training that would advance reconciliation and, of course, advance different types of inclusion in the workplace.
The Honourable Member for Wolseley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to give 15 minutes of time to the member from River Heights to ask some questions.
The Honourable Member for River Heights.
Thank you. Over the last number of years, there have been several instances of where women on councils, or mayors or reeves, have been harassed or bullied. And one of the outstanding examples was in St. Andrews, where Joy Sewell was mistreated. She had to spend something like $100,000 to defend her reputation and to defend democracy. And I wonder if the minister would comment on the current situation. And not many people are in a position where they could even spend that kind of money, and I'm not sure that she was either, but she did it because she thought that was the principle that she had to stand on. She was re-elected, and she was vindicated in the courts.
The Honourable Minister.
Well, thank the member for the question, and as members probably aware that since that time there's been a requirement for municipal elected officials to take code of conduct training and respectful workplace training. We've certainly seen a number of new councillors and reeves of mayors elected throughout this past election, the civic election, and of course I think it's very important that they're able to now not only able, but required to take this type of training to make sure that they understand what's appropriate as far as codes of conduct and respectful workplace. We know the Manitoba legislature and other elected bodies are no different than any other workplace. There should be a code of conduct and there should be elements of respect in the workplace. After all, it's representing the residents and the good people that elected you to that, or in this case, us, to that position.
The Honourable Member for River Heights.
Yeah, the minister has a responsibility for oversight at the Forks Market. And a number of people have come to me over the last several years observing that there was quite a bit of empty space at the Forks Market, and concerned about how this was being run and managed, and I wonder if the minister could comment.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As members are quite aware that the province has 1/3 share on the board. So it's 3 levels of government, federal, provincial, and municipal. But the board does rely on the management team on the daily operations. Certainly we understand that COVID had an outsized impact on all small businesses, particularly retail and restaurants and those types. So the Forks was no exception, but by looks at things now, have improved considerably since the height of COVID, and it looks like things are on the upswing. But again, the board has oversight, but they do rely primarily on the management team at the Forks to work on the daily operations of the facility.
The Honourable Member for River Heights.
Yes, this is a municipal issue, but it's also a transportation issue, and the minister may not have direct responsibility here, but I think it's important that he is aware of Provincial Highway 424, which runs from Highway 1 up Ford, just south of St. Eustache, is currently not considered an RTAC road, but it has major manufacturing facilities along the road, including, as an example, a soybean processing plant, which processes on the order of 1 million bushels of soybean a year. And there's a real concern that this needs to be updated to an RTAC road in order to address the needs of people along that road, which are, I mean, that's not the only major. There's steel manufacturing and various other manufacturing plants along that road.
Before I let the ministers answer that question, I would just say to members of the committee that the level of conversation around the table is getting a little bit loud and distracting. And I would hope that members would have a respect for those that are asking questions and answering questions, and that we give them the respect of the floor. So I would now call on the Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With respect to the question of Highway 424, that does fall under MTI, Manitoba Transportation Infrastructure, so I would defer to them on that, whether or not they're in an RTAC standard highway or not.
The Honourable Member for River Heights.
Yeah, I wanted just to make the minister aware of the situation. And one of the concerns, and again, it may only be partly under the minister's purview, is the problem of lead water pipes. And many other jurisdictions are making a major attempt to replace all lead water pipes. We have lead water pipes in Winnipeg and in Portage and various other cities in Manitoba. Brandon's an example. And lead has a major health issue surrounding it. And there was a study in Winnipeg which showed that 20% of those who have lead pipes, water pipes, have got high lead levels in their water. And I'm just wondering whether the minister is involved to any extent in this issue, because clearly it's a municipal issue, even if it is at least in part health, but it deals with infrastructure and so on.
The Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and of course, I appreciate the member bringing this important issue forward. It's certainly, we know that lead is not less than ideal as a water pipe. I mean, largely that comes under the Department of Environment and Climate. However, of course, through our department, it is a municipal overlap there. We can, through the Manitoba Water Services Board, municipalities can request funding to have them replaced. And of course, there's other mitigating factors that can be done to create more safe conditions for drinking water that our department can provide education on, but largely the replacement would be done through the Manitoba Water Services Board, and of course, Environment and Climate has a large role in it as well.
The Honorable Member for River Heights.
Now, in a similar vein, there's recently been concerns brought forward about asbestos in Winnipeg's water. And my understanding is that there was asbestos in many of the pipes, and that when these pipes get older, that there may be asbestos getting into the water. And again, it is a mix of municipal and health and other issues, but it seems to me that somebody needs to stand up and to tell people in Winnipeg whether this is a significant issue, and if it is, what's going to be done about it. So over to you.
The Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The guidelines set forward are set by the Department of Environment and Climate with respect to quality of drinking water, again, much like it was with the lead pipe issue. Of course, municipalities can endeavor to take on the project themselves if they want to, or in the case of changing out lead pipes, they can get the Manitoba Water Services Board to do that. In terms of flushing pipes, I understand that municipalities can undertake that endeavor themselves. So of course the standards are set by the Department of Environment and Climate, and of course as Municipal Relations Minister we take all these issues seriously, and there's often, as you're well aware, member opposite has been served in the federal government and knows that often there's a whole of government approach to certain issues just given the nature of and sometimes the complexities of it. So of course this does overlap in more than one department.
Thank you.
The Honorable Member for Wolseley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any further questions.
Seeing no more questions, we will move on to resolutions. Resolution 13.2, resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $13,705,000 for municipal relations, community planning and development for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2024. Shall the resolution pass?
Pass.
The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 13.3, resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $12,520,000 for municipal relations, municipal assessment, and advisory services for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2024. Shall the resolution pass?
Pass.
The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 13.4, resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $372,501,000 for municipal relations financial assistance for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2024. Shall the resolution pass?
Pass.
The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 13.5, resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $1,725,000 for municipal relations capital assets for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2024. Shall the resolution pass?
Pass.
The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 13.6, resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $117,354,000. I apologize. I will start this again. Resolution 13.6, resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $117,364,000 for municipal relations loans and guarantees program for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2024. Shall the resolution pass?
Pass.
The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 13.7, resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $90,548,000 for municipal relations other reporting entities capital investment for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2024. Shall the resolution pass?
Pass.
The resolution is accordingly passed. The last item to be considered for the estimates of this department is item 13.1 bracket A, the minister's salary contained in resolution 13.1. The floor is open for questions. There's no questions. Seeing no questions, we will move on to the resolution. 13.1, resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $7,782,000 for municipal relations, administration, and finance for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2024. Shall the resolution pass?
Pass.
The resolution is accordingly passed. This completes the estimates of the Department of Municipal Relations.
Okay, so you can read that part, just the people's.
The next set of estimates to be considered by this section of the Committee of Supply is for the Department of Agriculture.
The hour being 4:51.
The hour being 4:51, what is the will of the committee?
Ready to go?
Committee rise.
Yeah.